Let's talk about HEX Marketing. So we know in the past, like there's been various things done for marketing with X. Like I believe there's sponsored race cars, sponsored soccer teams. Do we want to sponsor the Super Bowl? I don't think we do. I don't think that's a good use of funds. I think there's better advertising concepts. One of the things I want to go through that I'm pretty sure Richard is well aware of is marketing is a lot about timing, right? Like, you catch, like, if you see 10,000 toothbrush ads, it's not going to necessarily make you want to buy a toothbrush unless you need a toothbrush, right? So marketing to people at the time when they want to see it, when they're looking for something like the product that you're selling is what the win is. So, with that timing in mind, when we look at the market conditions, and I know Axis just went through a ton of that stuff, um, where we want to see Hex marketing is when people are looking for investments, particularly in crypto, right? But not necessarily in crypto, just investments in general. So when we're moving into the part of the bull market rather, that I think we're moving into, we're starting to get towards what's going to be an optimal time to have some sort of ad spend that will, get hex out to people, so they'll notice what's going to happen. Now, I have, some concepts that I think are going to happen from what I've seen. So, well, quote Richard Hart on saying that there's a massive, never before seen marketing that's going to come. We don't know exactly what that is, but we do know that it's going to be a mailer going out to select people, but like possibly millions of people, from what I understand. Like there's containers full of products coming to the US at some point in time. I can't say when, but I think it's going to be pretty soon. From sort of just the talk of when the containers were shipped that Richard mentioned. I'm thinking September-ish. All right, maybe October. These things are going to start to get mailed out. Now, we don't know what they are, but we do know they have batteries. I have a pretty good idea of what it could be. I'm going to share the screen if Max can see this. There we go. So what we have here is a electronic device that could be mailed, that has a screen, that has a speaker. Hello, Richard Art here. I'm going to talk to you about Hex. All right. I think that kind of thing would be cool. It would have a lasting effect. People would show their friends. And it's more than two postcards 2.0. And as far as the effectiveness of this type of product, like statistically, it's actually really good. Mailers to people over 50 are one of the best marketing techniques. I know that a lot of people see this kind of stuff and they're like, oh, this wouldn't work on me. Well, then you're probably not the target audience. Like these sorts of things are going to be sent out to people who are likely over 50, who likely have some money that they could invest in something like X. And they're going to be interested in this. Notice that I just found this on Alibaba. Like this is not specifically the product that I think we're going to have, but it happens to be hex shaped, which is kind of cool. So I think something like this could definitively be a win. Now, does it do something else? Does it have other marketing data? I can't say for sure. But from the public Telegram room, I know it lists a couple different websites on the product. It's going to say hex.com, and reliable is then the catchphrase beside that. So it's also going to mention PulseChain as a possible thing, and pump.tires for new coins. But I think given the type of people I think would receive this marketing material, I think most of them are going to key in most closely on hex.com, right? Like reliable is going to ring a little stronger with people over 50 who have money to invest than the newest dog coin or whatever you might have on pump.tires, which plays its part. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I don't think it's going to be the winner of that marketing. Now, what else made Hex go up? What else was big, right? That made it do well in its first cycle to 10,000x. I think another thing that's going to come down to timing is going to be Richard coming back on the scene, coming back on the screen, and talking about Hex. Now, when should he do that? And I know there could be certain legal restrictions, et cetera, et cetera. But I suspect he's timing that as well, to a certain extent. There's going to be a time when it will be optimal, right? And that's going to be when things have already pushed up a fair bit, and then we're going to have Richard Hart on the screen again, talking about Hex, talking about PulseChain, and it's going to send waves, ripples through the market. People are going to be talking about it. People are going to be happy. People are going to be angry. It's going to destroy Twitter. I think that's going to be one of the major pushes in this cycle for Hex, is going to be Richard getting back on the scene, doing a media tour, getting interviewed by various Hex haters and destroying them as he's done in the past. And it won't be boring. If nothing else, it won't be boring. But the bottom line is going to be that, like, he did it before, he can do it again. We have a price that is pretty appealing if you understand what's happened in the past. And the chances of us seeing a new all-time high this cycle, I think, are probably pretty good. So I think we're looking at about 50 cents in the past, and going forward, I think that's probably not crazy that we could beat that number. And if you can buy it right now at a penny, well, the math is pretty good there. Not financial advice, just something I like to think about. But, like, what else can we do as a community to market Hex? I think one of the biggest things is just staying positive, right, and sharing information. One thing that I've noticed popping up lately is people trying to get educational things out there, and I think that's going to be huge, because when it's time, right, when the timing is right, when marketing is coming out, massive, never before seen marketing, when Richard is live streaming again, when all those things come together and people start to look for information on Hex, for them to find things I know Tam Tam's been doing a series of Hexkin University spaces on Twitter, things like that, where they can come in, they can be in a comfortable environment, they can ask questions, or where they can find instructional videos, right? On, like, oh, what is Hex? What can I do with my Hex? And, like, with that kind of thing, generally speaking, more the merrier, right? Like, obviously, some people are more keyed into how can I do that than others. But, like, bottom line, if you write a Twitter post on this is how you stake Hex, that it just adds to the pool of information that people are going to be able to find when they look for it, and that's gonna give a lot of confidence to new consumers. So, like, the community is the asset, and it is the marketing to a very large extent. Now, some people are going to come in, they're going to think we're a little bit wild, but, like, there's always some people who stick out, who provide quality information, who are willing to help others, get into the community themselves. And then with Hex, the Hex concept of the long-term staking, right? Basically, that wraps people into the community, and it makes them be essentially team members for up to 15 years, right? Or longer, is because people make staking ladders, just like Crispy does. He's staking Quattro Cinco all the time. So, like, once you get one person in and they've staked for 15 years, they're much more likely to share that with their friends and family. They're much more likely to advocate for other people to do the same, right? And they're much more likely to have concepts where they can build a staking ladder. They can have certain times where they're going to buy Hex, where they're going to sell Hex, and they essentially will, like, feed into a financial plan. Now, what I would like to see is bigger than what we're talking about now, though. We see, like, all these ETFs and things like that coming. There's an ETF for Solana, there's an ETF for Ethereum, et cetera, et cetera. Why couldn't there be an ETF for Hex? It has better legal clarity than the things I just mentioned. That would be fantastic advertising. So, like, if somebody wants to do the math, if somebody wants to check it out and see what it would take to make that happen, I don't think that is the craziest idea ever. And a big part of what we're going to see, I think, for the marketing push for crypto in general, and with the way, like, legislation, like, crypto president is going in the United States, like, to have Hex on the same table as those other big players would be pretty cool. And it's far from impossible. So, and then when, like, the boomers start coming in, I know in crypto, boomers, I think, is anything over 45. I would put myself in that category. But when they start coming in and looking at crypto, like, to have any sort of connection to the traditional market, I think would be like a cool extra edge. The other concepts that I think will play out in a big way is going to be getting Hex onto other chains, right? So being able to buy Hex on Base, being able to buy Hex, on whatever the flavor of the week is. We have the Richard Hart bridge that can essentially enable that for us. This is another thing the community could do. Like if you're a hex whale, you can bridge from PulseChain to Ethereum, where obviously there's already hex on Ethereum, but either or, you could then bridge it to the base chain, and you could put it in a liquidity pool there, and it could be available for sale. And that, that's sort of an in-between stage where it's going to catch more eyeballs, right? But it's not quite the same as a centralized exchange. Now, I consider centralized exchanges as marketing. I don't think it's the play for, the community long-term in terms of like, this is how things are done. But like when we're talking marketing, like ease of access is a huge part of that concept. So getting on one or more of the big 5 exchanges, I think is going to be one of the final marketing pushes for Hex this cycle. So like being on Binance, being on Kraken, being on Coinbase, more than just, information. Like you could actually go and buy that coin, and then you could transfer it to your private wallet. But that's going to get people's foot in the door. Now, is there a cost associated with that and so on and so forth? There could be. I think right now, would it be worth the cost that one of those big players would charge? Probably not. But like 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, when we start to get to market highs, there's huge interest. Fear and greed index is all the way at the top of the greed scale. That's gonna be the time where it's like, yeah, to have some sort of marketing spend to push us to a centralized exchange would be pretty cool and would be effective. Any comments from the audience on what would be other effective hex marketing strategies? Yeah, Hexcar agrees that Coinbase or Binance would be huge. I like that concept. I read an interesting post from Gary Funding Jim the other day. He talked about how Coinbase basically had a function where people could swap directly with their centralized wallet onto the decentralized DEX. And he suggested the concept that people should bridge some hex over there and get it onto the DEX. I want to say it's Aerodrome, and see if it works. So I haven't had time to explore that myself yet, but yeah, check out Funding Jim's posts about that. And I think somebody should look into that. It's not quite the same as just being on a centralized exchange, but it intrigued me. It sounded like a cool workaround to make it happen. And those kind of community efforts is where we're going to really shine in marketing. People really pick up the ball, and if somebody else drops the ball, there's a guy behind you that picks it up. The community is extremely strong with that kind of stuff. One thing that we're going to have to get a little better at is embracing new people. I've been pushing hard to like try to bring some new influencers into the space and things like that. And there's not always an awesome reception from the community. Many people do very well with that. Some do not. But I think that's probably going to be that one of the factors that really brings us to the top. It's going to be new influencers coming into the community, or established influencers that aren't part of our community, switching trains and getting on that hex train. The same people who trolled us during the bear for engagement, right? Which is a lot of the reason that a lot of influencers do a lot of things is for engagement. They could be the same ones who join the team and start pumping it again, maybe not for the right reasons. It could be for engagement. And there's going to be a knee-jerk reaction to be like, oh, you weren't nice to us when things were bad. I don't care. Like, just like, do you want to be right or do you want to win? I would like to win. So I think we should welcome these people, even if we think they may turn on us again in the future, or if we're mad because they were mean to us when things were sad. But I think they're going to come. Guys like Ivan on Tech, Crypto Rand, those kind of guys, they're going to show up when things look good. And that's fantastic. Like I would totally think that we should work with those guys to keep pushing the narrative, even though they weren't always kind to us when, things were bad in a bear market. And that's fine. That's how it works for some of these influencers, where that's actually their job, is to carry influence and not necessarily to support any one particular community. So if you see an opportunity, please take it or share it, to get other established influencers on board. And I think we just need to keep hitting these guys with positive things, with aggressive things. I go and hang out in Ivan on Tech's YouTube chat sometimes. Send him the odd super chat, which I think is another awesome marketing opportunity. For the price of a super chat, you can get fairly large influencers, and I'm talking like between $5 and $50. You can get these guys to say hex on the screen, right? Like it's a minimal personal investment that a community member could make to get any number of YouTubers to talk about hex, even for a second, right? When you have a dedicated audience of thousands of people watching who are interested in crypto, and you get Crypto Rand to say like, "Oh, hex, yeah, that's the one Richard made," like there is value there beyond the $50. So that is one mechanism. But to keep working on these guys, they see the audience, they see the community, right? They see that we're tenacious, and that we're generally positive, which I think at this point, this is something that we should work on. It is going to be make a big difference in marketing, because more and more of those guys will start to come over to the light side of the force, to cash in on the community being positive, right? Does that mean you should buy the meme coin they launched on PulseChain? No, probably not. But you could. That's up to you. But like, if they're here, they're talking about our thing, they're talking about PulseChain, right? They're debating Richard and getting destroyed by him on streams. That's fantastic. And I think that will be one of the final pushes in this market, is going to be just like general market acceptance by bigger influencers, right? Who are going to push it to the general market, who will accept it, right? Because they're doing it, and not us so much. So it's a long game, as far as like relationships, and it's hard some days. Like there's days where like oh no, people on Twitter are being mean to me today, which I mostly think is hilarious, but it's gonna happen. And like, you got to walk away from the keyboard, but like the community at large is going to be the main marketing push with things like that. The extra things though, like the massive never before seen marketing, I really think it's going to work. And it almost doesn't matter if anybody in the community thinks it's going to work. I think just the metrics of the number of people who are going to receive it, the novel concept, and what I believe is going to be the absolute perfect timing for that type of advertisement. And what we don't know, but I think is likely the case, I feel like this is probably a test. There could be something that comes next, right? Because a big part of marketing is compiling data and doing it better next time. So, like, let's say, for example, 200,000 of these things are sent out, and there's some way to measure the results. Now, whether that's because somebody clicked a link, went to a website, and it measures this many people did it, right? Like, there'll be data that can be used to refine that process to do better marketing in the near future. And then continual refinement will result in even better marketing, until you have a perfected product. And then once you have a perfected advertising product, the general wisdom is you do it as much as you can until it stops working, right? So, my guess would be the first 200,000 are a test round. There's some data achieved. The product has changed, the mailing list has changed, something has changed to make it better. And then that keeps happening probably for years, with a perfected product, right? Until it stops working, and then we need a new plan, right? Richard seems like he's come up with that plan all by himself. I suspect he's capable of coming up with a new plan.